And if we can get past that disconnect, if we can start to use terminology that connects us, or start to create modules of influence that affect us directly, then we will start to take responsibility for those actions, because we will see where they come from and how they affect things and what they matter to us. So there has to be a movement here, and I don't mean the movement back to behind the screen. And it's a move forward. I'll give you one example. DASNY has a 40 kW PV array on our roof. The Dormitory Authority, State of New York, we do about $7 billion worth of construction in New York State at any given point in time. We do public financing to the tune of $8 billion a year. It's a huge entity that none of you know about, right? We have 40 kW on our roof, which is really not a huge array. It's a fairly small array. It's about 6% of the electric use of our building in downtown Albany, which is very significant, but nobody at DASNY, not even me, and I'm pretty smart, can wrap my arms around what 6% means. What does that mean? Who cares? Why do I want to put that on my roof at my house? How does that relate? But if we can connect it and say the PV array operates all the lights and the PowerPoint at the intern presentations that happen today at DASNY, people start to get it. If we can say that this solar panel, and this is a marketing shift, right? You've seen this, Brookstone, you've seen this in every Uber Geek magazine. You buy a charger for your cell phone and you know the energy goes into that solar charger into your cell phone. There's a connection there. How about I buy a PV panel that can operate my fridge? I would know that. That would be a connection for me. How about understanding that we should have charging stations, perhaps for electric vehicles, so that we can immediately put the energy where it's needed? This connection is happening in the industry all over the place. We have light standards that have solar panels on them. How often have you seen road signs with solar panels? You know there's no wiring to that unit. It's on wheels. They wheel it in and it goes. People get it. So a big car charging station where there's immediate connection, I think would start to prepare the market to understand that energy has a starting point and a use point. That connection would be needed. I love that little graphic of the domino with the guy pushing the domino and eventually the huge domino falls and crushes him. I'm hoping that we don't actually get to that crush point, but people have to know that that switch affects them directly and not just with light. I also put a picture up there of a person in a lawn chair looking at a power plant. So when we talk about people protesting what wind turbines look like and what PV arrays do to the historic aspects of a city, man, we're comfortable sitting in lawn chairs looking at power plants. Why aren't we comfortable sitting in lawn chairs looking at PV arrays and wind turbines? They probably are more comfortable to be around, I think, but we have to make that connection. So my key point, as you've probably understood from me beating it like a oft-used drum, is that it's really a mind shift thing. We can't always preach to people without understanding what they perceive. We have to address their perception first, help them make that connection that they're allowed, as I wish I had thought of today, they're allowed to put on a sweater when they're cold, and that doesn't mean they're giving up their comfort. That means they're taking control of their comfort and being directly responsible and empowered to be and do what they need to be and do. So there's my pitch.
All right, and before we get into the open part, we have Lori Riley from the City University of New York. Thank you, Lori.
handle the Department of Energy funded programs for the city on behalf of New York City, and our partners are the Mayor's Office and Con Edison and EDC and all folks like that. So we lead these programs on behalf of the city, and I also come from a little bit of a different place, like John Lacey from Eric Mower was saying, is that my background is I spent 17 years as a broadcast journalist. So I kind of came from outside the room and was able to have sort of my finger on the pulse. Okay, I'm not finding it. So unfortunately, I won't have that. Having my finger on the pulse as well of the public perception because of having a program where I talk to the public. And so I think a couple of points here to make that I think are very important is that the message is very important. It has to be tailored to the particular demographics. So we're trying to go from the early adopters to mainstream America. And mainstream America has a very short attention span, about a tweet. So all of those financial discussions this morning, and whether it's a feed-in tariff or it's SREX, their eyes will glaze over. They want it to be very simple. They don't want to think about the water getting there, flipping on the switch, and how did the electricity get there. They don't want to think about how their computer's looking everything behind the scenes. They just want it very simple. So the message needs to, of course, be tailored to the demographics, but also what's very important is the messenger. Who is this messenger? Is it somebody that I trust? Is it from one side of the political aisle or the other? Is it coming from an installer who has a financial incentive? Is it coming from the business? Is it coming from an objective third party like SUNY, like Massachusetts organization, like CUNY? Is that the objective third party that can deliver the message? And most often, the message is coming from the press. It's coming from the media, and it's one of the most important relationships that we cannot ignore. Because right now, mainstream America is still thinking, solar, oh yeah, that company that failed, solar fails. That's it. That's the entire connection. And the media helped to give this perception because most of them didn't dive in, dig in deep enough to know, oh, China dumped on the market, that's why it failed. Which would have been a pretty simple tweet, but that didn't get out there, that message. So having relationships with the media is extremely important, and having very good relationships with them to help get this message out, and having that message ready for the media. And the good media, the people that will really dive in, you got to make sure your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted when you nurture these relationships. And beyond that, I think that when you go out to the public, you have to have a very tangible tool. And this also for the press. They've had enough of talking heads. They don't want to talk about policy. They don't want to talk about what's going to happen. They want something tangible. So what I wanted to show you, and I know that I emailed you guys, maybe you can pull it up, my PowerPoint, is that one of the greatest tools that we have been able to launch in New York City is the New York City Solar Map. Has anybody seen it?
Yeah.
So you can go on there, and every single one of the 1 million buildings in New York City have been mapped for the potential of solar. And this is different than other solar maps across the country. I think there might be 17 of them by now, something like that. And it's very granular. You can also click on the map and you can see the financial calculator, the incentives. It's all there. So the interesting thing is that when we got ready to launch and I started doing my pitch to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Reuters, and they came, and they could look at, the beta vision. We made them come and sit with us. They couldn't just get on it, before it was launched because we wanted them to do the story. They got excited. They immediately typed in their own personal address in the city or their office address in the city. And the payback time, they were so surprised to find that it was like 5 to 7 years. They were shocked. This was tangible. So then we were able, when we launched the map, we had the headlines from New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Reuters and so forth that helped get this message to the public, who could then go in and type in their address. And it wasn't just the major media. It's also the social media, the smaller media, the blogs and so forth. But that again, those people get it. The people in the room get it. We're trying to get outside of the room and change that perception as well. And I think that it is also critically important, as we're taking these tools, are we ready? Is the industry ready for the kind of ramp up that we want? Some areas like Vermont, one-page system, 10 days, pretty easy, not quite ready in other areas. That's why in parallel, we're working on streamlining the market, making it easier for the customer, easier for the installer, addressing those soft balance of systems costs, and we're talking about spreading that out across the state, doing what we can, maybe expanding the New York City solar map to other areas, because that says you're open for business. We're serious about this. This is what we're doing. It comes back, case in point, to what Pradeep and Elaine Keliaros has done here, is that, I spent those years as a broadcast journalist. Before